I'm Paul Larson, and it's time to shine the spotlight on violin virtuoso Joshua Bell.
World-renowned violinist Joshua Bell spent decades mesmerizing audiences with his breathtaking talent. But behind the spotlight was a quiet story of sacrifice, brilliance, and deep emotion. Now, with the news of his unexpected fortune being revealed, his family has been left in tears, not just because of the staggering wealth he left behind, but because of the hidden meaning attached to it. Every dollar, every detail tells a story they never knew. What Joshua secretly planned in silence is now shaking his loved ones to their core and touching hearts worldwide. The violinist who changed everything. Joshua Bell wasn't just a talented violinist, he was a prodigy. At just 4 years old, while other kids were still figuring out crayons and building blocks, Bell was already mimicking classical melodies on rubber bands stretched across his dresser drawer. By the age of 14, he was performing with major orchestras. At 17, he made his debut at Carnegie Hall. And from there, the world simply couldn't get enough. His bow danced across centuries-old strings with a passion and precision that felt otherworldly. Critics called him the poet of the violin. Fans lined up for hours to hear him play. Whether performing Brahms in Berlin or Mendelssohn in Milan, Joshua Bell wasn't just playing music. He was rewriting what it meant to feel something through sound. But Bell's influence didn't stop at the doors of concert halls. He crossed into popular culture like no other classical musician of his time. He starred in film scores, most famously lending his soul-stirring sound to the Red Violin, a hauntingly beautiful piece of cinema that elevated both the film and Bell's mystique. His appearances ranged from late-night talk shows to Sesame Street. He brought the violin back into public consciousness, not as an antique relic of a bygone era, but as a living, breathing force of art. And yet, for all the adoration and acclaim, Joshua Bell was never a showy celebrity. He didn't flaunt his wealth or lifestyle. There were no flashy headlines, no opulent parties. He was the embodiment of artistic humility, a quiet genius who let the music speak for itself. But that calm exterior, as it turns out, was shielding something much larger. Because when word emerged about what Bell had left behind, his estate, his possessions, his collection, it shook even those closest to him. We're not just talking about a few million tucked away in a savings account. We're talking about assets that may include priceless instruments, royalties spanning decades, investments few knew about, and real estate tied to acoustic engineering so precisely it borders on science fiction. It wasn't just a financial legacy, it was a hidden world. And his family, overwhelmed, not by greed or confusion, but by the sheer weight of it all. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a revelation, a window into who Joshua Bell truly was, beyond the bow and stage lights. Behind the elegance and grace of his public image, there may have been a shrewd planner, a collector of history, even a quiet architect of generational wealth. Which leads us to the question fans and insiders alike are now whispering. Could Bell's fortune reveal a side of him the public never knew? Keep watching to uncover the full story. A career built on genius and timing.
Joshua Bell's story isn't just one of talent. It's a masterclass in precision, vision, and extraordinary timing. Long before the world would come to whisper about the fortune he left behind, he was already charting a path that looked nothing like the classical music careers before him. And if you trace the arc of his rise, from a small-town boy in Indiana to an international sensation, it's hard not to wonder, was Bell always playing a deeper game? Born in Bloomington, Indiana, Joshua Bell displayed signs of brilliance early on. But it wasn't just his musical aptitude that stood out. It was his ability to adapt and evolve. Encouraged by a supportive family and surrounded by the academic rigor of Indiana University's Jacobs School of Music, he was primed for something special. That foundation, paired with his studies at the Juilliard School under the legendary Dorothy DeLay, was a formula designed not just to produce talent, but to produce legacy.
And legacy, it seems, was always on his mind. In 1985, at just 17, Bell made his debut at Carnegie Hall, performing with the St. Louis Symphony. That moment, one of the most hallowed stages in classical music, marked the beginning of a solo career that would stretch across continents and generations. By the early 1990s, Bell wasn't just performing, he was curating a public identity, balancing technical brilliance with emotional resonance. He toured with the American-Russian Young Artists Orchestra, connecting with audiences far beyond the Western classical circuit. But Bell didn't stop with the traditional canon. He embraced new compositions like Nicholas Maugh's Violin Concerto, written specifically for him. That piece won him a Grammy and confirmed what many had already suspected. Bell wasn't just interpreting the past, he was shaping the future. Then came the moment that would push his name beyond concert halls and into popular culture, the red violin. Bell performed the soundtrack's haunting solo parts, his violin acting as the unseen voice of the film's central character. The score, composed by John Corigliano, won an Academy Award. But even more notably, it positioned Bell as a bridge between genres, someone who could hold his own in the world of film and mainstream entertainment without ever compromising his classical roots. And he kept going. Collaborations with Hans Zimmer in Angels and Demons performances, alongside artists like Scarlett Johansson, cameos in TV shows from Mozart in the Jungle to Julie's Green Room. Bell became more than a performer. He became a brand. And brands, as we all know, have value that stretches far beyond the stage. By the 2000s, Bell had begun shaping his own musical empire. He accepted high-profile appointments, such as artistic partner with the St. Paul Chamber Orchestra and music director of the Academy of St. Martin in the Fields, a role rarely held by Americans. His recordings for Sony Classical became bestsellers, and his tours spanned continents. Then there's the business side. Joshua Bell wasn't just playing for applause, he was building something, slowly, strategically. He purchased the legendary 1713 Gibson X Huberman Stradivarius for just under $4 million, an instrument with a history as dramatic as any Hollywood script. And while many might have seen it as an indulgence, others speculate it was a strategic move, an investment in both sound and value. The violin's worth has likely soared in the years since, possibly doubling or even tripling. He sold his previous Stradivarius, the Tom Taylor, for over $2 million to make the move. That's not sentimentality, that's financial finesse. And considering the care with which Bell's career has unfolded, is it so outrageous to think that he may have been playing more than one kind of game all along? Through guest lectures at MIT, prestigious roles at Indiana University, and advisory positions with institutions like the Kennedy Center Honors, Joshua Bell didn't just master music, he quietly wove himself into the very fabric of cultural power. His movements were calculated, almost invisible, much like the delicate precision of his bow. Now, as whispers spread about the true magnitude of what he may have left behind, one question keeps echoing. Was Joshua Bell merely a virtuoso? Or was he hiding something more? A secret empire of rare artifacts and silent influence? Let's get into the details. The subway that shocked the world. On a chilly January morning in 2007, Washington, D.C., commuters trudged through the L'Enfant Plaza metro station like any other day. Coffee in hand, eyes fixed ahead, minds already halfway to their desks. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, except it wasn't just any morning. Standing beside a trash bin in a ball cap and jeans was Joshua Bell, one of the most celebrated violinists in the world, playing a violin worth nearly $4 million. No stage, no spotlight, no tuxedo, just him, his Stradivarius, and the indifferent shuffle of the crowd. What followed became one of the most profound social experiments in modern music history. Bell played for 45 minutes. Over 1,000 people passed by. Only 7 stopped to listen. He earned $32.17 in tips, far less than what one of his concert tickets would normally cost. The Washington Post, which orchestrated the event as part of a Pulitzer Prize-winning piece, posed a now iconic question. In a banal setting at an inconvenient time, would beauty transcend? For Joshua Bell, the experiment was never about money or ego. He knew the context. He wasn't testing his own fame. He was testing humanity's relationship with beauty, time, and awareness. And while the public grappled with its own reactions, shame, reflection, even amusement, something else was happening beneath the surface, something that would forever alter the mystique surrounding Bell. The image of a man who regularly filled concert halls, now virtually ignored, in a subway corridor, introduced a duality that fascinated fans and critics alike. Bell, for all his fame, had willingly disappeared into the background of everyday life. And in doing so, he became something more than a musician. He became a symbol, a mirror held up to society's rushed pace and misplaced priorities. But the subway experiment didn't just deepen Bell's cultural footprint. It did something even more curious. It reframed how people thought about value. Not just the value of art or music, but the value of a moment, of presence, and perhaps of legacy. Because if Joshua Bell could be so easily overlooked in plain sight, what else about him had been hiding in plain view? This is where the story takes an intriguing turn. The same man who could bring a concert hall to tears could also blend seamlessly into a metro station crowd. It's this contrast, the tension between high art and humble setting, that subtly echoes a much quieter mystery: Bell's financial legacy. Until recently, few considered what wealth someone like Bell might accumulate over a lifetime. After all, classical musicians aren't typically placed in the same conversations as tech moguls or Hollywood stars. But Bell's career, already layered with nuance and control, now hints at something more: that his artistry might be matched by a financial acumen just as complex and intentional. The subway story revealed a side of Bell that people hadn't expected, not because it made him look lesser, but because it made him look human. And that humanity, when paired with decades of brilliance, raises the stakes of what he might have left behind. If Bell could go unnoticed while playing a priceless Stradivarius on a subway platform, then maybe, just maybe, his fortune wasn't the obvious kind either. Maybe it was quiet, carefully constructed, disguised behind understated choices and humble appearances. Because the most fascinating part of that subway performance wasn't what was seen, it was what was missed. Just like his music, Bell's life may have been composed of hidden depths. And if the subway performance taught us anything, it's that the most extraordinary things are often right in front of us, and we don't even notice. Joshua Bell's real estate, investments, and silent wealth. Behind the soaring notes of Joshua Bell's violin lies a different kind of symphony, one not made of music, but of real estate, royalties, and remarkably quiet investments. While the world knows him as a performer of rare, emotional precision, there is growing curiosity around another side of his legacy: the silent accumulation of wealth that may have far exceeded public perception. Take his real estate, for example. Bell's primary residence is a penthouse in New York, an architectural gem tucked high above the noise of the city. But this isn't just any luxury apartment. Bell is known for his obsession with acoustics, which reportedly led him to custom-design parts of his living space to suit the sonic perfection a world-class violinist demands. In his world, architecture and sound are inseparable, and when a space is tailored not just for beauty, but for resonance, its value becomes something else entirely: functional, emotional, and financially significant. Beyond his penthouse, there are rumors of secondary properties. While not publicly confirmed, whispers of a private estate designed for rehearsal retreats or a getaway home equipped with a personal studio have circulated among industry insiders. Bell, famously private about his personal life, has never showcased his holdings in the way a celebrity might. But that discretion has only added fuel to speculation that his real estate portfolio may be broader and more strategic than it appears. And then there's the steady, largely invisible river of royalty income. For over 3 decades, Bell has recorded prolifically: solo albums, concertos, chamber works, film scores, and crossover collaborations. Each of these recordings lives in perpetual distribution across global streaming platforms, classical radio rotations, television broadcasts, and licensing arrangements. His involvement in Oscar-winning films like The Red Violin and contributions to soundtracks by Hans Zimmer and others only deepen the well of potential revenue. Unlike a touring paycheck, which ends when the lights go down, royalties keep playing long after the encore. They flow quietly, monthly, quarterly, sometimes yearly, but they add up, especially when your recordings are featured in award-winning films, public television broadcasts, and globally distributed albums. In recent years, Bell has also stepped into entrepreneurial ventures, albeit subtly. He's launched his own music label, giving him full control over his creative output and the profits. In an age where many artists rely on big-name recording companies, Bell's choice to own his masters could represent a savvy business move with long-term financial benefits. There are also hints of collaborations with acoustic technology firms and software developers, possibly using his expertise to shape products for other musicians or educational platforms. These pieces of the puzzle, real estate, royalties, and entrepreneurial control, paint a very different picture from the one most fans see on stage. Bell, it seems, has been composing a quieter symphony off-stage, one made not of melodies, but of assets and foresight. So now the question lingers in hushed tones. Has Joshua Bell's wealth quietly grown far beyond music? The violin's worth more than gold. In the world of classical music, a violin isn't just an instrument. It's a vessel of emotion, history, and in some rare cases, an investment worth more than gold. For Joshua Bell, this truth is embodied in the centerpiece of his legacy, the legendary 1713 Gibson X. Huberman Stradivarius, a violin so valuable and storied, it could be the crown jewel in any museum or private collection. But Bell doesn't lock it away in a vault. He performs with it, lives with it, and has bound his legacy to it in ways that go far beyond music. The violin's backstory is as dramatic as its sound. Once owned by famed violinist Bronislaw Huberman, the instrument was stolen not once, but twice in the early 20th century. In the final theft, the culprit kept the instrument hidden for decades, only confessing on his deathbed. When Bell first laid hands on it, he was in London, just before performing at the Proms. A violin shop informed him that the Gibson X. Huberman was available, but only for a very limited time, as it was about to be sold to a German industrialist. Bell knew he had only minutes to decide. After playing the violin for less than 10 seconds, he described an instant magnetic connection. "I knew it had to be mine." He promptly sold his previous Stradivarius for over $2 million and acquired the Gibson X. Huberman for just under $4 million. Since then, its value has reportedly tripled. Today, it's estimated to be worth well over $15 million, and some say that's a conservative guess. But the Gibson X. Huberman is not Bell's only prized possession. Over his career, he's played on multiple historical violins, including a 1743 Guarneri del Gesù, and earlier, more modest Strads that he acquired and later traded up for better models. For Bell, these instruments are not only creative tools, but emotional companions. He's likened them to fine wine, aged, complex, and full of character. And he's compared their sound to having millions of sonic colors, giving him a wider emotional palette to paint with. These violins, while essential to Bell's performances, are also high-stakes assets. They are, in every sense, living artifacts, part art, part tech, part legacy. Their value appreciates not just with time, but with who plays them. Bell's ownership alone adds provenance, meaning that what he leaves behind may be worth far more than their appraised market price. This raises a fascinating question. What happens when a violin becomes more than a violin? Could the Gibson X. Huberman spark future legal or emotional conflict within Bell's family? Could it become a symbol of inheritance, triggering disputes or deeply personal decisions about whether to sell, preserve, or donate such a historically charged piece? Because while some inherit homes or bank accounts, Bell's heirs may inherit instruments that carry not only multi-million-dollar price tags, but the weight of a genius's soul. The legacy that will leave his family in tears. When the day comes that Joshua Bell steps away from the stage for good, his family won't just be facing a division of wealth, they'll be facing a legacy. And that legacy won't be measured in dollars alone. It will be laced with meaning, complexity, and questions no spreadsheet could ever answer. Because what Bell will leave behind isn't just valuable, it's immense. To inherit his estate will mean inheriting a story built over decades. The world-renowned Gibson X Huberman Stradivarius, for example, won't just be an artifact. They'll need to decide how to handle an instrument tied so closely to Bell's soul. Do they preserve it in a museum, loan it to a foundation, or entrust it to another musician? Every option comes with both emotional and ethical implications. After all, it's not just a violin. It's a symbol of everything Bell stood for. Beyond the instruments lies another layer, his educational and philanthropic footprint. Bell has devoted much of his life to making music more accessible through teaching, public outreach, and mentoring. If he establishes endowments or scholarship programs, his family may one day find themselves responsible for shaping the future of music education. Upholding that vision won't be a simple financial task. It will require sensitivity, insight, and commitment. There's also the potential for foundations, creative ventures, or partnerships that Bell might build in his lifetime. Running these initiatives could involve managing assets, leading boards, and navigating the balance between honoring his legacy and adapting to a changing world. It's a job that would demand more than management. It would demand vision. In the end, what his family will inherit may be more daunting than any dollar figure. Because Bell's life isn't just made up of performances and recordings, it's composed of values, vision, and a carefully orchestrated narrative that deserves to be preserved with care. Perhaps the real fortune won't be found in wealth, but in the weight of responsibility that comes with carrying a legacy so deeply personal. When Joshua Bell's final note fades, his legacy won't simply vanish. It will echo, waiting for someone to decide what comes next. And that decision may matter more than anyone can yet imagine. But what do you think Joshua Bell's family will do with a legacy so rich in soul, not just wealth? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more.